If I could turn back time and give myself a slap across the face, I wouldn't even hesitate. Not for a second. Hello. My name is Clara. I'm 30 years old. My husband, my ex-husband, is Everett. He's 35. We were together for 3 years. I don't even know where to begin this, so maybe the only thing to do is just let it bleed out onto the page. But let me warn you, right now, this isn't one of those stories where everything works out in the end. There is no silver lining here. There is no redemption arc waiting for me in the final act. It is ugly, shameful, and it is entirely my fault. Let me start by saying that I loved my husband, or, at least, I thought I did. Everett is one of the kindest, most hardworking men I have ever met. He runs his own small landscaping business, a business he built from the ground up, with dirt under his fingernails and sweat on his brow. He's not the flashy type. He's not the guy who commands a room when he walks in. But he's the kind of guy you can depend on. The kind of guy who remembers that you like exactly 1.5 sugars in your coffee, without you ever having to ask again after the first time. The kind of guy who stays up until 1 a.m., helping you assemble a bookshelf you insisted on buying, even though you didn't realize you'd need help with it. But I'm not here to tell you how wonderful he was. Actually, the reason I'm here is because I managed to ruin it. All of it. And it all started last Friday night. Or rather, with the words I spoke when I came home. The morning started with a groan. My head felt like it was trapped in a vice, a dull, throbbing drumbeat behind my eyes. The world was a blurry, indistinct mess. I vaguely remembered a night out. A girls' night. Wine, I think. Maybe cocktails. Too many of them. I rolled over, my hand reaching for the empty space next to me in bed. That was the first alarm bell. Everett was always the last one to get up on a Saturday. I pushed myself upright, the room spinning for a moment. I stumbled out of the bedroom, my thoughts still thick and syrupy. The house was quiet. Not the peaceful, lazy Saturday morning quiet I was used to. This was a heavy, suffocating silence. The kind that presses in on you from all sides. I found him in the kitchen. He was sitting at our small wooden table, staring down at the swirling patterns in the grain of the wood. As if the answers to the universe were hidden there. The coffee machine was off. He hadn't made any. He always made coffee. "Hey," I mumbled, my voice raspy. I tried for a smile. "Rough night." He didn't look up. Not immediately. He just sat there. And when he finally did lift his head, his eyes. God, his eyes. They were usually a warm, gentle hazel. That morning they were hollow, devoid of any light. Like 2 stones at the bottom of a riverbed. His first words to me were not, "Good morning." They were not, "How are you feeling?" They were, "Is that what you really think of me?" His voice was flat. Emotionless. It was more terrifying than if he had been screaming. I blinked, confused. The fog in my head was too thick. What are you talking about, Ev?" He finally looked at me, truly looked at me, and I felt like a stranger in my own home. "Last night," he said, his words slow and deliberate, each one a perfectly placed stone building a wall between us. "When you came home, do you remember what you said to me?" I searched my memory. It was a chaotic jumble of loud music, laughter, and the sharp taste of lime. The walk home was a blur. His face when I walked in, I couldn't picture it. "No," I whispered, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I was pretty drunk." He gave a short, bitter laugh. It was a sound I had never heard him make before. "Yeah, you were." He paused, taking a slow breath. "You looked me right in the eye, Clara, and you said, 'I'm not even attracted to you anymore.'" The air left my lungs. The kitchen, my home, suddenly felt like a vacuum. The silence that followed his words was absolute, crushing. In that moment, staring at the shattered look on my kind husband's face, I knew it was all over. I just didn't know how right I was. And that is when it all fell apart. Everett and I met about 4 years ago. It was at this little cafe downtown, a place with mismatched chairs and the constant smell of roasted coffee beans. He was the manager there. I still remember the first time I really saw him. He was behind the counter, wearing a plain button-up shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. He had this tired smile, the kind that told you he'd had a long day but was still holding on. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't anything like the movies. He wasn't my type. At all. He was cute, I suppose, in a gentle, unassuming way. But not in the tall, chiseled, confident way that usually caught my eye. Everett was different, quiet, dependable. Honestly, just a bit ordinary. I didn't pay much attention to him at first. We exchanged a few words here and there when I came in during my lunch break. Then one day, I left my scarf behind. He ran out after me, holding it in his hand. Instead of just giving it to me, he cracked this little joke. Trying to single-handedly save the planet from textile waste, huh? It wasn't hilarious. It wasn't some witty, charming line. But it made me laugh. A real, genuine laugh. I suppose that's where it all began. At the time, I wasn't really looking for a relationship. I had just gotten out of a messy breakup with a guy who, looking back, was all sculpted abs and no substance. My friends were always teasing me about my terrible taste in men. One of them, Audrey, even said to me once, "Clara, maybe it's time to stop going for the fireworks and find someone who actually wants to keep you warm." I guess Everett fit that description. He wasn't fireworks. He was a steady, warm hearth. He had this way of making you feel safe. After a few more weeks of coffee shop encounters, he asked me out. I remember I actually hesitated before saying yes. I wasn't sure if I was physically attracted to him. But then I thought to myself, why not? I was so tired of chasing men who were infatuated with my looks but had no regard for me as a person. And Everett? He cared. It was obvious from the very beginning. We dated for about a year and a half before he proposed. It wasn't anything grand. There were no flash mobs or fancy dinners on a rooftop. He just took me to our favorite park one afternoon, the one where we had our third date. He pulled out a simple, beautiful ring and said, "Clara, you're my best friend. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" It wasn't a movie proposal, but it felt real. So I said yes. The first year of our marriage was fine, great, even. Everett was everything I thought I needed. He was a wonderful friend. He was dependable. He was kind. Even as his business got more hectic, he always found time for me. I'd never felt so loved, so secure. But somewhere along the way, the slide began. I can't pinpoint the exact moment. It wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 tiny cracks, spreading silently beneath the surface until the whole foundation was ready to crumble. It wasn't like we were fighting all the time. It was more subtle than that. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Or maybe, things I had chosen to ignore. Like the way his work shirts never seemed to fit him quite right around the middle. Or how he never seemed interested in going to the gym with me. I told myself it didn't matter. His character was what mattered. But a small, poisonous part of me wondered if I had settled. Looking back, I think it was the brunches with my friends that did the most damage. I'd sit there, sipping my mimosa, listening to them talk. "Oh my God, you guys, Brandon just booked us a surprise trip to Aspen. He's so spontaneous. Oh, did I show you the picture of Kyle after his marathon? He's so fit, it's insane." Then they'd turn to me. "How are you and Everett, Clara?" And I'd feel that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Don't get me wrong, Everett was great in so many ways. But in those moments, all I could think about was how he didn't fit the picture-perfect image I secretly wanted. I'd scroll through Instagram at night, lying in bed next to him. I'd see couples hiking up mountains, looking effortlessly gorgeous. Couples on exotic vacations, their bodies toned and tanned. Then I'd look at the few pictures I had of Everett and me. He wasn't photogenic. He always looked a little stiff, a little awkward. His clothes never seemed to sit right. It wasn't fair. It was shallow. I knew it was. But I started wishing he looked different. Taller, fitter, more, something. Instead of appreciating the man he was, I began to find petty, insignificant things to criticize. If he wore a shirt that was a bit snug, I'd say, "Maybe that one shrunk a little in the wash, honey." If he went back for a second helping at dinner, I'd chuckle and say, "Someone's got a healthy appetite tonight." I thought I was being clever, subtle. Now I see those little remarks for what they were. Tiny little paper cuts. Death by 1,000 cuts. And I was the one holding the blade. Everett noticed the change, of course. He wasn't oblivious. He'd ask me, "Is everything okay with us?" Or, "You've been kind of quiet lately." And I'd brush it off every single time. "I'm just tired. Work's been stressful." The truth is, I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. Because it didn't make sense, even to me. I loved Everett, or at least, the part of him that made me feel safe. But in my head, I was building this imaginary version of a perfect husband, a perfect life. And every time the real, wonderful man next to me fell short of that impossible, imaginary standard, I grew more and more frustrated. Things started to snowball. I began to view everything he did through a lens of disappointment. If he spent Saturday afternoon on the couch watching a game, I'd think, why doesn't he have more ambition? Why isn't he out doing something productive? If he told me a story about a difficult client at work, my eyes would glaze over. It was too mundane. Too ordinary. It was ridiculous. I know that now. But at the time, I couldn't stop myself. I was comparing my real-life husband to a fantasy. A collage of Instagram husbands and movie heroes. It didn't help that my friends weren't shy about their opinions. One afternoon, after one of those brunches, my friend Audrey pulled me aside. "Clara, you're gorgeous. You could have any man you want," she said, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "And you chose Everett. Not to be rude, but don't you ever feel like you settled?" I laughed it off. But her words stuck to me like tar. Did I settle? I began putting distance between us. Not consciously. But I did it. I'd make plans with friends and forget to tell him until the last minute. If he tried to initiate a date night, I'd find an excuse. I was too tired. I had a headache. Maybe next week. The physical distance was easy. The emotional distance, that was the real betrayal. One night, he asked me, point blank, "Do you still love me, Clara?" I froze. I wanted to say yes. Of course I do. But the words got caught in my throat. They felt like a lie. Instead, I said something vague. "Of course I do. Why would you even ask that?" He didn't push. But the look on his face told me he wasn't convinced. That was the thing about Everett. He never pushed. He was calm, patient, and understanding. And instead of appreciating that, I started to see it as a weakness. I wanted him to fight for me, to demand answers, to show some fire. But he didn't. He just let me pull away. And in my twisted, broken mind, I blamed him for that too. That Friday night started like any other girl's night. Audrey, and a few others. We met at a trendy new bar downtown, the kind of place with exposed brick and cocktails that cost $20. The plan was just to unwind after a long week. A drink or two, some laughs, and then home by midnight. But one drink turned into 3, then 4. The music was loud, the conversations were flowing, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking, I was just floating. It felt good to not worry about my life for a change. To not feel that constant, low-level disappointment. What I didn't realize was that I was a complete wreck by the time I stumbled into a taxi. It was well after midnight. I could hardly stand, let alone reason properly. Everett was still up when I fumbled with my keys and pushed the door open. He was sitting on the sofa, reading a book. The porch light was on. He had waited up for me, to make sure I got home safe. That's the kind of man he is. Reliable. And instead of thanking him, instead of collapsing into his arms and telling him I loved him, I did the unthinkable. I don't remember exactly how it happened. The details are fuzzy, coated in a thick layer of alcohol. I know my emotions were bubbling over, a toxic cocktail of insecurity, bitterness, and cheap tequila. At some point, he must have asked me if I was okay. And I looked at him, my kind, dependable husband, sitting there, waiting for me. And I said it. I'm not even attracted to you anymore. Just like that. No context. No explanation. Just those 7 cruel, cutting words. The next thing I remember is waking up the next morning. My head pounding, a feeling of dread sitting in my mouth like poison. At first, I didn't understand. I thought it was just another hangover. But then I saw him in the kitchen. Silent, cold. And his first words to me, "Is that what you really think of me?" My heart stopped. I tried to deny it, to tell him it wasn't true, that it was just the alcohol talking. But how could I? The fact that those words had come out of my mouth, drunk or not, meant there had to be some truth to them, right? It meant that deep down, that poison had been festering for a long, long time. I mumbled an apology. "I didn't mean it, Ev. I was drunk." Even as I said it, I could hear how pathetic it sounded. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. That almost made it worse. He just nodded slowly, as if he were processing a final, painful piece of data. "I need some time to think," he said. Then he walked away, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen, with a gaping hole growing in my stomach. The next several days were strange. That's the only word for it. Everett didn't mention it again. But everything was different. It was like a switch had been flipped. He started going to work earlier and coming home later. He'd say he had a lot of business to handle. At home, he was a ghost. He was there, physically, but his spirit, his warmth, it was gone. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped laughing at my jokes. He wasn't rude or mean, but his silence was deafening. Every glance felt colder, every response more distant. It was like living with the ghost of the person I'd married. The guilt began to eat me alive. It wasn't just about what I'd said that night. It was about everything. The little digs at his appearance, the emotional distance I'd created. And now, I was paying for it. I tried to fix things, in all the wrong ways. I cooked his favorite meal, even though I was a terrible cook. He ate it silently and said, "Thanks." I left a little note in his lunch bag, like I used to when we were first married. I don't know if he even read it. One night, I even tried to initiate intimacy, hoping it would bridge the chasm that had opened between us. He just gave me this sad, tired look. "I'm not in the mood, Clara," he said gently. "Maybe another time." It hurt, but I couldn't blame him. I had started this fire. I couldn't be surprised when I got burned. It was a Friday night, almost 2 weeks after that horrible night. I couldn't take the silence anymore. The house felt suffocating. I knew I was the reason for all of it, but I didn't know how to fix it. So, instead of staying home and facing the mess I'd made, I ran away. I told myself I just needed a breather, a night to clear my head. Deep down, I knew I was just being a coward. I went to a bar alone. The same one from before. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, just one drink, and then I'd go home. But one drink turned into another, and another. I was trying to drown out the guilt. That's when he showed up. He slid onto the bar stool next to me. "You look like you've had a long day," he said. He had an easy smile. The kind of practiced charm that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. He wasn't my type. Not really. But he was confident. And he was paying attention to me. We started talking. It was effortless. He laughed at my stupid jokes. He told me I had a beautiful smile. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. I knew I shouldn't have been entertaining it. I was a married woman. But the line between innocent conversation and something more began to blur with every sip of my drink. At one point, he leaned in closer. "You want to get some air? It's getting loud in here." I hesitated. For a split second, but I nodded. We stood outside by his car. The cool night air should have been a wake-up call. But it wasn't. He said something about how he couldn't believe someone like me was out alone. I don't know what came over me. A cocktail of loneliness, alcohol, and a desperate need for validation. Before I knew it, I was leaning in, and so was he. And then, we kissed. It wasn't a passionate, movie-worthy kiss. It was clumsy, fueled by bad decisions. But in that moment, it felt like an escape. And then the sound of a car pulling up broke the spell. I pulled away, laughing nervously, and turned to see who it was. And there he was, Everett, sitting in his car, just a few feet away, watching us. My heart didn't sink. It shattered. It just stopped. He didn't get out. He didn't yell. He didn't do anything dramatic. He just sat there, with this look on his face. It wasn't anger. It was disgust. Disappointment. Like he was looking at something utterly unrecognizable. The guy I'd been kissing saw my reaction and followed my gaze. "Do you know him?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. That's my husband." His face dropped. "Oh, man. I didn't know you were married." I wouldn't have. But I wasn't listening. My focus was on Everett. I started walking toward his car, my mind screaming, "Everett, wait!" I called out. He didn't say a word. He just slowly, deliberately, rolled up his window and drove away, leaving me standing there, alone in the middle of a parking lot. An idiot, a cheater, a fool. I had just destroyed the last shred of trust he had in me. And this time, I knew I could never fix it. I barely slept that night. I kept hoping I'd hear his car in the driveway, hoping he'd come home, yelling, screaming. Anything was better than this silence. But he never did. When I walked into the kitchen the next morning, there he was. Sitting at the table, arms crossed. He looked like he hadn't slept either, but his face was terrifyingly calm. That was Everett's way. He didn't explode. He imploded. He just got quiet. And his quiet was so much worse than any rage. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady. I sat down across from him, my hands trembling in my lap. I opened my mouth to start making excuses, to apologize, to say anything. But he cut me off. "You made it clear last night that you don't respect me or our marriage," he said, his tone cold and controlled. "You've been pulling away for months, Clara. I've been trying to ignore it, hoping we could work through it. But what I saw last night..." He paused, his jaw tightening. That was the final straw. My throat closed up. "Everett, it wasn't what it looked like. I swear. I didn't mean for any of that to happen. I was just..." "Don't," he said, holding up a hand. The word was a razor blade. "Don't make excuses. You kissed another man. You chose to do that. And even if you didn't mean for it to happen, it did. And I can't come back from that." I broke down then. The full weight of everything crashed over me. "I'm so sorry," I sobbed, tears streaming down my face. "I messed up. I know I did. But I love you, Everett. Please. Just let me make it right." He shook his head, and for the first time, I saw his eyes glisten. But he didn't let a single tear fall. "I gave you everything I had, Clara, and it still wasn't enough." He looked at me, really looked at me, and his next words broke me completely. "I don't even know who you are anymore. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for," he said softly, "but it won't be with me." He stood up and walked toward the door. "I'll pack my things and move out by the end of the week. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the separation." "Everett, please," I begged, following him. "Don't do this. I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do." He turned to look at me one last time, his expression completely blank. Empty. "You can't fix this, Clara. You broke it. And I'm not staying to pick up the pieces." And then he was gone. True to his word, he packed his things and moved out. He didn't argue or fight. He didn't even ask for anything, except his clothes and a few personal items. The house felt cavernous without him. When his lawyer reached out, it was the final nail in the coffin. He wasn't dragging things out. He was cutting ties. Clean and simple. I signed the papers in a daze. My signature on that line felt like signing a death certificate. The death of my marriage, The death of the best thing that had ever happened to me. And I was the one who had killed it. It's been 6 months. 6 months since Everett walked out of my life. Not a single day goes by where I don't think about how badly I screwed things up. He's moved on. From what I've heard, he's doing better than ever. He's dating someone new. Someone who is, from the one picture I accidentally saw, drop-dead gorgeous. But more than that, she seems to make him happy. I saw them once. By accident. At the grocery store. She was laughing at something he said. And he looked free. Like a massive weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He's thriving. His business is expanding. And from what Audrey told me, before she stopped talking to me, the new woman treats him like a king. Meanwhile, I'm here. In a tiny studio apartment that always seems to smell like dust and regret. My parents helped me move in, but even they seemed more disappointed than supportive. My own mother said to me, "Clara, you had everything most women dream of, and you threw it all away. I don't even know who you are anymore." She wasn't wrong. I've had a lot of time to think. To stare at the cracks in my ceiling and trace the path of my own destruction. It wasn't just the cheating, or the horrible things I said. It was the way I let my own insecurities poison something so real and good. I was so focused on what other people thought, on wanting a perfect life that looked good on the outside, that I completely overlooked the beautiful life I already had. A stable, loving relationship with someone who truly, unconditionally, cared about me. Now, I'm the one people whisper about. Even my friends have distanced themselves. Audrey's husband told her he didn't want her hanging out with me anymore, because I'm a bad influence. That stung. More than I expected. But again, I can't blame him. I've become the cautionary tale, the person people point to and say, "Don't end up like her." I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for what I did. But I'm trying to move forward. If nothing else, I hope someone, somewhere, hears my story and learns from it. If you have someone who loves you for who you are, don't take it for granted. Don't let your shallow fears or the opinions of others make you question it. You might not get a second chance. I know I've lost Everett for good. There's no fixing this. No going back. And honestly, I've made my peace with that. I had something so rare and valuable, and I let it slip through my fingers. At first, I wanted to blame the circumstances, the pressure from friends, even Everett, for not being more exciting. But the truth is, I have no one to blame but myself. He was everything I could have ever asked for, and instead of appreciating that, I let my own self-doubt and vanity destroy us. So, to Everett, if you ever, somehow, hear this, I am so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. You deserve so much better than what I gave you, and I truly hope you found it now. I hope she treats you the way I should have. And to everyone listening, thank you for sticking around. Be kind in the comments, or don't. I probably deserve whatever you have to say. This isn't one of those tales where the narrator gets a happy ending. It's just reality. And sometimes, reality is messy and painful. But it's mine, and I'm learning to live with it. Take care of the people you love. Don't take them for granted. Bye for now.